Well, the 2020 presidential election is right around the corner, and President Trump's fundraisers gathered, the major ones anyway, the big donors that could ostensibly write checks to the president, gathered, and some of them are saying that there is no plan. I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle now, and Bill, this is a story that comes from Politico, and I will stipulate up front, it's Politico, okay? So we know where they're coming from. I will also stipulate up front that the story was, one might say, lacking in balance in the sense that it had no quotations from anybody who disagreed with the main premise of the story. But here's the main premise of the story.
Imagine my shock.
Here's the main premise of the story, Bill. President Trump is doing great in fundraising. Since January 2017 through the end of 2018, his campaign and affiliated entities raised some $136 million, a new record. In the fourth quarter of 2018, they raised $21 million and spent $23 million. Out of the $136 million they spent, right now they have $19 million in the bank, so they're not broke. But all that said, Bill, there's a really large portion of those donations that are coming from small donors, less than $200 donors. And some of the big donors at this conference are mumbling to Politico that the president doesn't have any plan to engage or involve major donors. First of all, let me just ask if you think that's even a problem.
No, I think it's awesome. I really do. What that tells me is that there's a reasonable chance that the ambassador to Russia might be somebody who's actually appropriate rather than the guy who gave the fundraiser at Harvey Weinstein's house that put Hillary Clinton over the top. But on a much broader scale, I would imagine this drives the Democrats crazy in the same way that it makes me happy. When you're dealing with, if the overall thrust of what this article is about is that Donald Trump is not playing kissy to big deep pocket donors because he's getting so many larger numbers of smaller donations from the American people, I don't see how that's bad news at all.
I don't think there's really an ipso facto connection there that says he's not kissing up to the major donors because he is getting enough. You don't get the sense that the president himself is that engaged. But what you're hearing is not just that he's not engaging those major donors, 125 of which gathered for this event that was sponsored by Mike Pence, Vice President Mike Pence's Political Action Committee. But there were a couple of other things they brought up. The Trump campaign does not seem to have a plan to win the Rust Belt seats that he did fairly well in 2016, but which went Democrat, or at least leaned heavily Democrat in 2018, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan. There doesn't seem to be a plan to deal with that. There doesn't seem to be a specific plan to raise enough money to fund the now massive infrastructure that he has, which he didn't have in 2016. There's no plan, of course, for the president to stay on message. And perhaps the thing most grating to them, there's no big picture guy in the campaign. There's no Karl Rove. There's no David Axelrod.
Well, first of all, I take strong exception to your statement that there's no plan to win the Rust Belt states. 4.5% economic growth for 4 years is about as powerful a plan to win those states as I could possibly imagine. The fact that working people are taking home actual paychecks, more money, and that they're getting, peanuts in terms of $1,000 tax rebates or whatever the case may be, in Nancy Pelosi's words, that's the best possible plan.
That may be true, Bill, but in 2018, in the midterm elections, either the voters didn't agree with what you just said, or they didn't see any connection between what President Trump's doing and what their local congressional representative was doing.
Donald Trump wasn't running in 2018. The people that were running in 2018 were the Republicans that said that they would repeal Obamacare first chance they had a Republican president in office, and all the rest of it. That's who was running in 2018. I'm not terribly concerned about any of this, only because Donald Trump is the Mule, and if you ever read the Heinlein Foundation the Asimov Foundation trilogy, he's this kind of unexpected, unpredicted flash out of the blue that just comes in like a cosmic ray and just upsets all of the plans. Everything goes off the rails, and he is unconventional in every way, and as a just as the most spot-on example of how unconventional he is in relation to this specific issue. The entire reason you raise money for political campaigns is so that you can get the message out there, get some media attention, get some spotlight. The president, no matter who the president is, obviously has a major advantage in that regard. But Donald Trump is not the kind of guy who needs to buy publicity, which is why he's president of the United States. He didn't buy the publicity that he got in 2016. He earned it.
Well, that's part of the spending, Bill, but another big part of the spending is staffing the state offices and these local offices. And they're not just saying that, he doesn't have a plan to staff them. What he's saying is those things are in place. The operation is in place, and this alligator is going to require feeding. And the president seems to, or at least his campaign, seems to be obsessed with the kind of digital tactics that worked for him in 2016, but doesn't really have that big picture guy.
The ground game.
Yeah. Well, they have the ground game in place. What they're saying is they're going to need rich people's money in order to keep that ground game in place, and they're not finding a way to ask for that.
They're going to need money to keep the ground game in place. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to need rich people's money to keep the ground game in place. The man is a complete cipher. All of the things that I think what's probably the clearest in this drift of this discussion today is that the people on the left who have been convinced and not without cause, utterly convinced that the way that you win elections is by having superior organization and superior strategy. It's all in the weeds, it's all Moneyball. It's all tweaking the this district and that district, and who do we have here? This whole idea that politics is basically elections are won or lost by which magician has, or which wizard, I should say, has the superior recipe for their magical spell. This is what this sounds like to me. It sounds like people on the left who, in the case of Politico, make a living commenting on politics, don't know what to do with a guy who won in such an unexpected fashion and who continues to govern in such an unexpected fashion and seems to care not the slightest bit about the things that are critically important to them. Therefore, catastrophe looms for Donald Trump. And listen, maybe they're right. I'm not one of these guys who just, he's going to be fine, he's going to... No, I'd love to tell you that I was, but I'm not. I'm not that sure of anything in this world.
Well, I have one of these guys.
Sure.
I want to quote one of these guys because Politico did quote him. It's Brad Parscale. Brad ran the digital operation in the 2016 Trump campaign. And to Politico's credit, they include a couple of lengthy quotes from him. But in part, Brad said, "We are creating the largest campaign operation in American history, an unstoppable apparatus that will follow and implement President Trump's strategy to great effect. We are building the largest ground game in history, looking at multiple levels of data, responding in real time, and putting the president on the ground in the right places to win. On every metric," Parscale said, "we are on track to outpace our 2016 numbers by many multiples. Over the next 2 years, our state-of-the-art operation will share President Trump's litany of achievements directly with the American people, and on Election Day 2020, President Trump will soar to re-election and continue his historic presidency." And to that, at least some rich donors said,
Okay, so they're convinced it's going to happen too. I mean, what do you want me to say about that? I'll tell you what I didn't want to hear. I didn't want to hear somebody saying, "Now, here's what I didn't want to hear." I didn't want to hear somebody who ran the 2016 campaign saying, "Everything that we did right in 2016, we are doing wrong now." That would have actually genuinely worried me. But for the guy to say that a person could come out of nowhere, win an election against the most predestined candidate in all of American history, at a time when he was a complete unknown, for this person to say that everything that we did to win that election, that fluke election, we are doing orders of magnitude better now than we were doing before. And on top of this, we have this economic growth to run on, and we have this, I don't remember hearing much about ISIS lately, and North Korea and Iran, and moving the Jerusalem embassy, and on and on and on and on and on. I mean, if Politico's trying to make this sound like bad news, I don't think you've gotten to that part yet.
Well, and let's take one more factor into consideration, and this is my final question. When President Trump ran in 2016, he was best known as a media celebrity, as a business person, as a wealthy person, but mostly as a non-politician. Right. Well, once you get elected, as I learned, even in my little local level, you're a politician. Can President Trump really afford to run the same sort of rogue fringe operation in 2020 that he ran in 2016, now that he's an actual politician and he's got this gigantic infrastructure that he has to carry on his back?
You're bringing this story to attention, and the Political article is proof that he's doing exactly that. The fact that he was elected as an outsider and is now looking at his reelection campaign in a way that no insider would is an indication that he is going to run 2020 as an outsider and has in fact governed for the last 2 years as an outsider. There's an awful lot about the Donald Trump presidency that you can criticize if you're big on form and manner and points of etiquette and those sort of things. But the overall success of the country is I think it's just unassailable, and likewise the premise of the courts. So I don't see anything in this article that would have worried me, and I was prepared to be worried. So basically, let's just recap. The people who are used to putting in big money into political campaigns for Republicans are people who are used to losing big money, because they put their money into things like the RNC and they put it into all of these consultancy firms. I sat there at a fundraiser for Mitt Romney 5-6 weeks before the election in San Francisco. They raised a ton of money. I think it was the single most successful fundraiser Romney had. And Romney's advisor said, "Oh, don't you worry, we're not going to spend a penny of this in California because we know we're not going to win California. We know we're going to spend it here, 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 and here." And I said to myself, what kind of message is that? You should be trying to win every state. So if he's not listening to these professional political advisors, and if he's not listening to the people that are saying, here's Jim Jackson who bundled $2 million last time around, and Donald Trump says, well, we got $4 million in last week from the American people. I think all of this is just nothing but good news, and the fact that Politico is writing about it in such a negative way is about all the evidence that I need to see that he's about to kick somebody's butt.
Well, if happy days are here again, Bill Whittle will be commenting on it between now and the 2020 election, and we hope well after that.
And if happy days go out the door and things get really miserable, we will be doing much, much, much better as a company. And my fondest hope is to stay in a place of relative pecuniary compared to the rest of the country, because that's how this game works.
Well, it is the relative generosity of our members that makes this show possible, and everything else that happens at BillWhittle.com. These are folks who went to that website and clicked on the Become a Member link. If you have forgotten the name of the website, I usually put it in the description just below this video, so feel free to click that. You can also click the little bell, the notification bell at YouTube, so that you will get a notification every time we post a new video. But more importantly, become part of that team that actually funds these operations. YouTube serves mainly as a great place to host videos and a great place to have your videos demonetized if you mention anything controversial.
Like liberty, capitalism,
like
freedom, the Constitution.
I will say, just to throw in for a little side comment on YouTube, we were posting some tags on a recent video, and the phrase Virgin Galactic got flagged as sexually suggestive, and the phrase gun rights got flagged as possibly hateful and violent. So if you would like to cut out the middleman and make sure
and continue to sponsor this hateful and violent and
right.
Sexually suggestive speech, then we are looking for you.
If you'd like to be part of the group that makes it possible for us to not rely on the pittance that we might otherwise get from YouTube, we would welcome you as members at BillWhittle.com. So for Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.